Watch right now on the Front News Project. War in the Black Sea, elimination of Russian aviation, the Ukrainian Navy destroys Russian helicopters. Ukraine will close the skies over the Middle East. The armed forces of Ukraine know exactly how to fight Iranian Shaheds. And also, the battle for Donbas. Real combat footage. You have to see this. Fiery, intense and blazing. Watch frontline footage right now. Greetings, this is Volodymyr Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. The armed forces of Ukraine are successfully liberating their territories. At least 9 settlements have been deoccupied in the south. In Donbas and Crimea, Ukrainian defenders are actively preparing the ground for their liberation. First and foremost, enemy ammunition depots and logistics are being successfully destroyed. The occupiers no longer feel safe even in Donetsk and Mariupol, where over the past, after a relatively calm year, they had already started to relax. Details in our report. The armed forces of Ukraine cannot be stopped anymore. Our defenders have launched a counter-offensive. In an instant, the Russian front collapsed and the occupiers began to flee, abandoning more and more of the territories they had previously seized.
Overall, in the 2 months of this year, as we can see, up to 400 square kilometers of territory have been liberated.
Recently, the focus of Ukrainian attacks has shifted to the Russians' near-rear positions in the occupied territories. The past week has been one of the most significant and successful in terms of the frequency and geographic spread of strikes against the enemy.
The military forces of the Russian Federation's casualty rates and equipment losses per month are currently demonstrating a consistent downward trend. December, January, February, all of this is confirmed.
There you have it. For example, our aviation and HIMARS MLRS are striking enemy positions, infantry and the occupiers' equipment in the Alexandrovsk direction. After such a massive strike, the Russian invaders have absolutely no chance of survival. And here is the Zaporizhia direction. Here, a Kasta radar station was destroyed by Ukrainian forces, unmanned systems. The geography of strikes during the Ukrainian armed forces counter-offensive is impressive. Our defenders managed to strike not only along the front line, but also behind enemy lines. Recently, Mariupol and Yalta have also been hit. Explosions there do not cease. The Ukrainian armed forces are striking at barracks, ammunition depots, deployment sites, and air defense assets.
We know that a little over a month ago, the Commander-in-Chief, General Syrskyi, said that defense alone would not solve the issues. In this war, and at the very least, it must be active. This means that counterattacks are being carried out in certain areas.
It's turning out to be a hot week for the occupiers in Tokmak and the surrounding areas. For the first time, the occupied city is under such intense fire. It was here before the strikes began that the largest concentration of Russian rear reserves was gathered for offensives, maneuvering, and attacks along the front line.
The armed forces of Ukraine have amassed a substantial concentration of military forces, primarily consisting of airborne assault troops, which are considered the most highly specialized and elite combat units of the Ukrainian armed forces, and they have done so with the specific aim of launching operations from the northern direction. By steadily advancing from the north toward the south, the objective is to successfully reach the strategic rear of the Russian group, which is currently operating to the west of Huliaipol.
Putin's army finds no peace in Crimea either. There, the Ukrainian defense forces struck hangars in Yevpatoria where Russian troops stored and serviced multi-purpose drones. Forepost and Orion. By the way, the Ukrainian armed forces owe such outstanding effectiveness of their strikes, among other things, to Ukrainian partisans who secretly operate in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, as well as in Russia.
Pro-Ukrainian residents, who were the first to carve out space in the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea, put up all sorts of Ukrainian flags, Ukrainian symbols, and hung yellow ribbons. Later, this resistance grew stronger. They began to pass on, as confirmed by the resistance movement, military coordinates and military data.
Their intelligence is invaluable, and each new act of sabotage becomes almost a personal slap in the face for the Kremlin and Putin.
In Klin-Moscow region, an Atesh agent destroyed a Liven mobile satellite communication complex. And
Our partisans regularly carry out similar attacks.
Members of the movement say that it was precisely their actions and the information they gathered that made this possible. Ukrainian strikes on Crimea. In particular, according to Atesh, it was they who directed the Ukrainian missile strike on the Russian landing ship and submarine, the Minsk and the Rostov-on-Don, as well as the attack on the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in September 2023. And
Now, Ukrainian partisans from the resistance are paralyzing a key railway line in Luhansk, which has dealt a serious blow to the supply of the Pokrovsk grouping of the Russian armed forces. At present, the partisans are actively helping our defenders with the spring counteroffensive.
They have united and are carrying out active actions as part of the partisan movement.
Specifically in the military sphere, they conduct sabotage operations at military facilities, as well as carry out terrorist acts, eliminating occupation officials both in newly occupied territories and in the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. They are also actively engaged in gathering and transmitting military information.
This data lets Ukrainian forces deliver precise strikes against enemy groups.
They say that they provide information about air defense systems, warehouses, military bases, and troop movements, sometimes observing targets for weeks.
In addition, our partisans in Donbas and Crimea are actively preparing the ground for the liberation of the region seized by Putin. Thanks to their work, the occupiers never feel safe, neither in Donetsk nor in Mariupol, nor anywhere on the territory of the Crimean Peninsula. And with the inevitable advance of the armed forces of Ukraine at the front, the fear among Russians only grows.
Brothers and sisters, the military movement Atesh is preparing for the liberation of Crimea from the Rashists. We are near Jankoy, waiting for the armed forces of Ukraine. We have created dozens of caches with weapons, explosives, and ammunition. As soon as the armed forces of Ukraine cross the administrative border with Crimea, we will seize administrative buildings and military facilities.
Now, an analysis of the operational situation on the blazing Pokrovsk direction of the front. Fierce battles continue. On the Pokrovsk direction, the enemy carried out 20 attacks. The occupiers tried to advance in the areas of the settlements of Shakova, Krasny Liman, Rodinske, Pokrovsk, Kotlina, Udakne, Molodetske, and towards Belitsky. One clash is still ongoing. And now, another extremely important topic. Ukraine is closing the skies over the Middle East. Our recent years' developments in air defense are being sent to save the powerful and wealthy countries of the Persian Gulf from Iranian drones and missiles. Details in our report.
Ukraine is becoming part of the Middle East security system. It turned out to be harder to shoot down Shaheds than the Americans expected. And the U.S. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, together with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. They say this openly. They admitted that Iranian Shaheds are a bigger problem than they initially expected. Because the drones fly low and slow and can avoid air defense systems better than ballistic missiles. While countries in the region are trying to defend themselves against Iranian strike UAVs, it is specifically Ukraine's experience in countering Shaheds that is becoming critically important for the Allies.
The drone and missile attacks that Iran is now using are, in essence, a new technique of warfare. When your conventional air defense systems are overwhelmed by cheaper drones and then ballistic missiles come in afterwards, there's no real defense against that. There is no single wonder weapon against this. A whole system needs to work against it. In Ukraine, this system was built over years.
According to the Financial Times, the United States and at least one Gulf state are already in talks to purchase Ukrainian interceptor drones. They plan to use them for protection against Iranian UAVs. Shaheds, which Tehran has stockpiled by the tens of thousands and is actively using in the region. The reason for the interest in Ukrainian systems is not only their effectiveness but also their cost. A single Iranian Shahed costs about $30,000, whereas a Patriot interceptor missile costs more than $13 million. Ukrainian interceptor drones, on the other hand, are several times cheaper and have already proven their effectiveness in the war against Russia.
You need to set all this up, arrange it in layers, assign priorities, and carry out some coordination actions. This is exactly what they lack, because they have no experience in this.
It was Ukraine that was the first to begin mass use of serially produced interceptor drones costing only a few $1,000s in order to destroy Russian versions of Shaheds, which are regularly launched in waves at Ukrainian cities and infrastructure.
It is precisely for this experience, so that we can help make this system as effective as possible in a shorter time frame, that I think our specialists are being brought in.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed Kyiv's readiness to share its experience and even interception tools against Iranian drones with the Middle East.
Do they want our expertise? We are open. If their representatives come, we will provide our expertise, especially since there are requests from Europeans and from the United States of America. We are receiving requests to share our experience with partners from the Middle East.
In return, Kyiv hopes to receive what Ukraine itself is critically lacking: missiles for the Patriot air defense systems.
We ourselves are at war, and I said this absolutely frankly. We have a serious shortage of the things they have. They have missiles for the Patriot system, but with Patriot missiles, they won't be able to shoot down hundreds or thousands of Shaheds. It's expensive. Nothing is spared for people, that's clear. But they simply don't have that many missiles. That's why they need interceptor drones, which we have. And we have a shortage of missiles. Pack 2, Pack 3. Therefore, when it comes to exchanging technologies or weapons, I think our country will be open to that.
Iran continues to carry out chaotic strikes on the countries of the Persian Gulf. In particular, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Amman are under attack. Moreover, Tehran is also striking military facilities in other European countries. Among them are Germany, France, and the United Kingdom.
We need proactive stories where we integrate into the European space, where we act together with Europe, and Europe sees that we are an asset, that we are a powerful, let's say, reinforcement, a strengthening, and these are new technologies. I think that the benefits of unification are much more important than the new risks we might face directly from Iran.
Ukraine has once again proven that Kyiv is an essential ally for European countries. Even with limited resources, Ukrainian experience and technologies are capable of protecting not only their own cities, but also ensuring the security of their allies on the other side of the planet.
And now we move to the Konstantynivka direction of the front. Fierce fighting continues. In the Konstantynivka direction, the occupiers launched 11 assaults on the defenders' positions in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinivka, Prishchevka, Ivanopoleya, Berestokh, Rusinya, Sofiivka, and towards Ilinovka and Novopavlovka. This week, Defense Minister Fedorov stated that, in parallel with peace negotiations, Ukraine has prepared a war plan. It includes 3 key directions: strengthening air defense, stopping Russian troops, and depriving Russia of the economic resources to continue the war. Meanwhile, directly on the battlefield, Ukrainian defenders are doing everything possible and impossible to liberate their homeland from the Russian invaders. It was there, into the very heart of the war, that TSN military correspondent Andriy Tsaplyenko went, together with the 93rd Brigade, to show how this full-scale war has changed. An exclusive report. Coming up next.
Something is flying somewhere. I see it. Hurry up, the intersection in the shattered frontline city of Donetsk region. Strategically important for our defense. A Russian FPV drone is chasing a pickup truck with Ukrainian soldiers, but the anti-drone patrol is already waiting for it in ambush. There it is. FPV on fiber optic cable. The Russian killer operator knows that electronic warfare can't see him. The lives of these fighters depend on whether their eyes can spot the drone in time. Did we hit it or not? The FPV drone just flew over this intersection. The guys managed to chase it off a bit, but it kept going, flew somewhere toward the city center, and maybe it crashed. But we didn't hear any sound, so... there's the sound.
We managed to fend off the drone here. After that, every time the guys drive by, they always say hello. We shot it down with small arms, saw it, and hit it with an assault rifle.
What was it carrying?
It was carrying what they call a carrot, which is an RPG-7 warhead.
The group breathes a sigh of relief, and it turns out there are quite a few civilians around. It's amazing that right now there's a hunt for FPVs, yet people are just walking everywhere here. Here comes a man with a bike pulling it and not even paying attention for drone flights and the work of mobile groups. Aren't you afraid of these drones here? Are you going?
I really need to go get some medical supplies right now. Urgently.
They are all potential targets. FPVs don't turn back. If it doesn't hit the military, it will target civilians. Lada 10. It was a Lada 10 apparently. And I think that this is a civilian car.
This is a completely civilian car. Believe me, the military doesn't use these.
The anti-drone patrol is commanded by the former deputy chairman of the Geniches district of the occupied territory. It is worth noting that he was actually one of the very first people to sign a 60-plus year-long contract in the industry.
These are the remains of a Russian Lancet. It was shot down with a machine gun. Wow, it broke off. That's a shame. But you can see the bullet holes in it.
And when did you shoot it down?
Yes, it was literally 2. This one is fresh. Fresh?
The 93rd Brigade has been fighting in this direction since the first year of the full-scale war. And
now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Sloviansk front. The bloody rampage of the enemy army continues. And here, on the Sloviansk front, the enemy tried to advance 11 times. In the areas of the settlements of Yampol, Dronivka, Platonivka, Zaketne, Reznikovka, and in the direction of Rai Alexandrovki. And here's another thing. Ukraine has a serious problem with ammunition for its patriots. A number of international publications warn. After all, the lion's share of their international reserves is now being used to protect the skies in the Middle East from Iranian missiles. Is the threat to Ukraine so serious, and what are the ways to resolve it? Let's figure it out together.
Ukraine is running out of missiles to counter Russian ballistic threats. It is reported that against the backdrop of the war in the Middle East, the world is facing a growing shortage of missiles. Almost all major international publications are writing about the shortage of Patriot missiles. Vladimir Zelensky had stated that there were not enough missiles for the American air defense systems even before the American-Israeli campaign in Iran. Now, after Tehran began striking at US allies, the demand for these missiles has become even higher. As a result, supplies for Europe, and in particular Ukraine, are now under threat.
Essentially, production capacity is limited to 500 missiles per year. In principle, this is normal for peacetime, but it is not enough for the combat operations taking place in Ukraine.
Having assessed the situation, analysts say that in recent months, Russia has focused specifically on ballistic strikes. The air defense of the defense forces handled cruise missiles quite confidently. They often destroyed 100% of aerial targets. But as for ballistic weapons, unfortunately, only certain Western systems are capable of shooting them down.
Temperatures dropped to -20, even -25 degrees. It was during these frosts that ballistic missile strikes were carried out. They strike with Iskander-M missiles, they strike with Kinzhal missiles, and they use other missiles as well, let's say experimental hypersonic ones. What do they call them? They strike with anti-aircraft missiles. With the S-300, S-400 systems, in other words, with all the available ballistic means they can use to strike.
In the US, they also believe that if the war in the Middle East drags on, at some point the states might simply refuse to sell Patriot missiles or significantly reduce the number of missiles supplied. This assumption was made by General Ben Hodges. At
a certain point, the White House might do just that. Or the Pentagon might say, we will stop selling this equipment here because it is needed elsewhere. You know, the administration, both the previous one and the current one, has not acted quickly enough to increase the necessary stockpiles of these types of munitions. Of course, I think you know how complex the production of Patriot interceptors, Tomahawks or Hellfires is. Things like that are not the kind of things you can just make easily. You know, you can't just start producing hundreds of them a day. It's a very labor-intensive and expensive process. Only now are we taking the necessary steps to increase our production capacity.
However, despite the difficult situation, there is still a way out according to experts. For example, the production and supply of those very missiles from Europe. Even though Western stockpiles have been significantly depleted, there is still a certain number of missiles in storage. In addition to this, Germany has started its own production under a US license.
Missile consumption has sharply increased throughout the Middle Eastern region. In Ukraine, as a result of Russian shelling of our country, but the Europeans recalculated their needs and concluded that they are catastrophically behind what they actually have. and the queue for American missiles produced in the US has stretched out for several years ahead. Therefore, it is a completely natural step for the Europeans to concentrate production at their own facilities. By the way,
not only Patriot is capable of shooting down Russian ballistic missiles, the Sayam-2T air defense system can also handle this, and it is also in service with the Ukrainian armed forces. And considering that it is produced in Europe, Ukraine can additionally receive them by decision of its partners, both the systems themselves and the missiles for them. At the same time, Ukraine can counter Russian ballistic strikes with its own resources using domestically produced long-range missiles, Flamingo, FP7 and other means, and this has already been demonstrated repeatedly.
If we cannot shoot down the missiles, we need to destroy them on the ground. There was a report about the destruction of an Iskander-M missile depot during the period when Crimea was occupied. There were even photos, even videos published. It's difficult to assess how many of these missiles there were. From my point of view, at best, several dozen. But about 2 weeks ago, a strike was carried out on an arsenal in the village of Kotluban, Volgograd region. And this is a huge arsenal.
It is worth noting that the war in the Middle East, in addition to the Patriot shortage, has also caused problems for Russia in the West. Until now, Iran's regular supplies to the Russian armed forces often coincided with missile attacks on Ukraine. But today, Moscow has lost this resource, possibly forever.
Iran really does constantly supply the Russian Federation. Some kind of shipments? We understand that these are not dates in powdered sugar. We understand that they are sending something by ships across the Caspian Sea, by planes. What's important is this. These could be components for missiles, for Shaheds. They could be cartridges, shells, anything at all. Right now, Iran definitely has no time for the Russian Federation. They're just trying to survive themselves. That's why I'm 99.9% sure that there won't be any deliveries to Russia in the near future. And so, perhaps we can expect that fewer things will be coming our way. Either missiles or Shaheds.
At the same time, according to forecasts, the US and Israeli operation in Iran should be completed by the end of this month. And as soon as the hot phase of the war is over, obviously the flow of missiles to the Patriots will resume as usual.
And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the Alexandrovsk front line. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the Alexandrovsk direction, the enemy attacked 6 times in the areas of the settlements of Voronoye, Ternovoy, Zlagoda, and Stepovoy. Additionally, Pesantsy and Velikomikhailovka were subjected to enemy airstrikes. Directly on the front line, the situation does not always change. It is not always powerful-looking weaponry, but rather small drones that have turned out to be a terrifying revolutionary weapon. It is precisely because of them that so-called kill zones have appeared, armored vehicles have disappeared, and Russian disposable soldiers have been sent into assaults. All the details are coming up in an exclusive report by TSN war correspondent Andriy Tsaplienko.
The war has changed radically over the past 4 years, but the most dramatic changes are happening right now.
Their plan is to break through us, move north, and link up with the Lyman direction. In other words, to bypass Sloviansk from above, between Sloviansk, because they won't be able to take Drushkivka, Konstantynivka, Sloviansk, or Kramatorsk head-on.
Just a year ago, the Kholodny Yar fighters were happy that the shell shortage was over, and that they no longer had to ration ammunition. Artillery was actively operating here, and tank operations were being conducted. Enemy positions were being hit by grads, but today, bringing a tank out to the positions almost always means losing it. Drones have changed the battlefield. At first, the battlefield became transparent for both us and the enemy, and then fiber optics rendered electronic warfare systems blind. That's why main roads have turned into tunnels made of netting. And the most important element of defense has become these kinds of mobile hunter groups targeting drones with regular firearms.
1 AK-70. The second is the Turkish Typhoon.
Mobile groups of the 93rd Kholodny Yar Brigade are on duty everywhere along the road to Konstantinovka. The enemy understands their importance perfectly well, so he will not regret even a drop if he finds one. Rotation occurs as quickly and unnoticeably as possible.
Pedal to the metal.
Listen, okay, listen. While the vehicle is moving, the shooters might not hear it. A drone.
Damn, they're starting to upgrade. There are some, they've already come up with such a know-how that we can hear it, roughly speaking, from about 100 meters away, no more. They're changing their strategy. They're either trying to knock us out or bypass us.
They bring a ground robotic complex to the starting position. If there is no cover group on the road, then the team of operators might simply not make it to the point. It'll be burned by an enemy FPV. Yeah, these aren't reefs. The Volya-tracked platform is loaded with ammunition, batteries for drones, and food supplies. The recipient is the crew of the Vampire aerial robots. The cargo could also put on a fireworks show.
This is our ammo, something like that.
What is it?
It's a fab.
A high explosive bomb?
Yeah, it's dropped.
How much does it weigh?
This one, 13,800, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's powerful.
Yeah, that's a good little bomb.
Basically, the Vampires make up for the lack of aviation and real guided bombs. With these munitions, drones take apart enemy fortifications and positions from which the Russians launch their FPVs. If the ground robot doesn't reach the destination, then the aerial one won't be able to strike the enemy either, and the Russians will advance.
They're trying to push through.
They're trying to advance. Advancement. So far, they haven't succeeded.
This time, the bombs reach their destination. At the Vampires' field positions, there is only equipment.
The pilot can be anywhere, even in Kiev, as long as he has a connection.
But you're not pilots, are you?
No, we perform the function, meaning all the physical work. Whatever can be done in the field, we can do it. If it involves electronics, that's not our area. That means the aircraft needs to be taken back to the mainland.
This is the advantage of Ukrainian drones. The Russians no longer have this after Elon Musk disabled Starlink for them in February. Ukrainian operators are sitting quite far from the front line. Are the Russians ahead of us in drones, or are we ahead of them? Or is there parity?
Well, the Russians have more support, I think. Somehow they are developing this technology more. I think we are a bit behind in this regard. Although it seems they still don't have such heavy bombers as we do.
The task for the guys at the positions? To attach a munition or, as they say, send a humanitarian package to the front line. Right now the payload contains food, water, and charged batteries. Everything is prepared in advance. Andrei, the fighter assembling the package, lost his leg.
He was blown up on a TMK. I'm unfit for military service.
Not long ago, he would go out to the positions on his prosthetic like this when there were fewer drones in the air.
Well, you can't really run, that's for sure. It's uncomfortable. So how far is it to the pipe? About 8.5 kilometers one way.
He could have been discharged, but he doesn't want to abandon his comrades. And more than anything, he wants to bring victory closer under these new conditions. The war has changed dramatically and continues to change. Robots like these, both aerial and ground, used to be a rarity on the front lines. Now they're basically becoming expendables, as they say on the front line. But in reality, everything depends on people, on the speed and precision of these guys' actions. The delivery works precisely like the mail, except this post office is periodically shelled by the enemy. That's why the daring Kolodnoyer postmen prepare the drone under cover. They bring the drone out to the position as discreetly as possible, a few minutes to check the systems, and the package takes off into the dark sky. Just one logistical flight. Over the course of a day, there can be thousands like this along the entire front line. But if there's no delivery today, the forward positions won't hold. The kill zone beyond Konstantynivka will expand. To prevent this, the logistics system works like clockwork for survival, for victory.
That's all for today, but very soon on Front News, there will be new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, brought to you so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.